All right, today we're diving deep into one of the most powerful and honestly most misunderstood parts of the human mind, our imagination.
I mean, when you hear the word imagination, you probably think of fantasy, right? Daydreaming, stuff for artists or kids. But what if I told you it's not just that? What if it's actually the most critical tool we have for survival, for strategy, for success in the real world? And that's the big idea we're going to unpack. The source material calls it the key faculty of our minds. Why? Because at its core, imagination is what lets us, well, hack reality. It's what unplugs our brain from the here and now. It lets us process the world offline, run these incredible simulations, and literally build new futures. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at imagination as the ultimate toolkit. First, the tools for seeing futures. Then, the tools for building worlds. And finally, the tools for actually creating reality. Then, we'll see how it all comes together as your mind's own operating system. Let's get into it.
All right, part one, tools for seeing futures. Think of these as your mind's scanners. Their whole job is reconnaissance and planning, basically to see what's on the horizon and get you ready for it. So the first tool in this kit is anticipation. This is your brain's predictive coding function. It's not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. No, it's constantly running models, projecting trends, trying to figure out what's coming next. It's all about minimizing surprise and, staying one step ahead of any threats. And this is where it gets really powerful. Think about military strategists. A good commander isn't just reacting to what the enemy just did. A great commander is using anticipation to visualize the enemy's second, third, even fourth move down the line. They're preparing for threats that haven't even materialized. It's pure proactive strategy, not reactive. Okay, the next scanner tool is hypothetical thinking. This is basically a simple three-step process for exploring possibilities. First, you just ask, what if? Then you run the simulation. You follow the chain of events in your mind. And finally, you get to assess the outcome, all without any risk in the real world. It's like a free trial for reality. And lawyers? They are masters at this. They use hypothetical thinking to fight the entire trial in their imagination long before they step into a courtroom. They come up with every single possible objection, every argument the other side could make, and they prepare a defense for all of them. So by the time the real trial starts, they've already fought and won dozens of battles in their head. Okay, so we've used our scanners to see potential futures. Now what? Well, now we need a place to play around with those possibilities. That brings us to part two, the tools for building worlds. I like to call this the sandbox. It's where you can test things out with zero risk. The first tool in the sandbox is mental simulation. And let's be clear, this is not just daydreaming. This is serious business. Think of it like a rigorous physics engine in your imagination. It takes an idea and it forces it to obey the laws of causality. It's asking one simple question: will this actually work? I mean, the classic example is Nikola Tesla. The story goes he didn't just have a fuzzy idea for an electric motor. He literally built the entire thing in 3D in his mind. He would run it for weeks, simulating it so precisely that he could see where the parts would start to wear down. All of this before a single physical piece was ever built. Just think about the time and money that saved. Okay, another amazing tool in the sandbox is role-playing. The source calls this empathic imagination, and it's an incredible skill. It's the ability to kind of turn down the volume on your own ego, your own perspective, and run a simulation from someone else's point of view. And you see this with elite negotiators. They don't just think about what their opponent is saying they want. No, they're in their heads, role-playing the situation from the other side. They're imagining the pressure from their boss, what their team is telling them, and that lets them craft offers that solve the hidden problems, the things the other side might not even be talking about. All right, we've scanned the future, we've tested ideas in the sandbox, and that brings us to our final and maybe most important set of tools, part three, tools for creating reality. This is the factory. This is where imagination stops being just a private, internal thing and starts to make a real dent in the outside world. And this is a super important point to make here, the difference between imagination and creativity. A lot of people use them interchangeably, but they're not the same. Imagination is the internal lab. It's the private process. Creativity, that's the external product. That's the public artifact. So imagination is the potential. Creativity is the crystallization of that potential into something real. The main tool in the factory is called Envisioning. You can think of it as directed imagination. This isn't just passively seeing a future. This is the willful, focused construction of a high-resolution future that you fully intend to make real. You're not just seeing the destination, you're imagining the road to get there. A architect's render is a perfect, modern example of this. It's not just a pretty picture of a building. It's a simulation. It shows how the sunlight will move through the rooms, how traffic will flow around it, what it will feel like to be inside. The whole point is to make that imagined future so vivid, so utterly compelling, that stakeholders will invest millions to bring it into existence. So let's put it all together now. When you see all these pieces, it becomes clear that imagination isn't just one thing. It's not just a single tool. It's really the entire operating system for your mind. It's how you put the whole toolkit to work. So, just to recap the whole toolkit we all have inside our heads. You've got the scanners, that's for seeing and anticipating what's next. You've got the sandbox, that's for testing and simulating worlds without getting hurt. And you've got the factory, and that's for building and creating reality. And that is why this is all so important. This is the key faculty. It lets us process the world offline. It lets us learn from mistakes that never even happened. It lets us build these incredible futures that, at first, only exist in our minds. It really is the engine of all human progress when you think about it. So I want to leave you with one last kind of mind-bending question that the source material brings up. We've been talking about how powerful our mind's eye is as an internal tool. But what happens when brain-computer interfaces can project that mind's eye directly onto a screen? What happens when our imagination is no longer a private theater, but a public broadcast? Now that is something to think about.